The road to Fenlock is rutted with spring thaw, and the wagons sink deep into the muck with every mile. Long-limbed birds stalk the waterlogged fields, and on the hillsides beyond, the crocus push through the frost. By day, the peasants whisper about false cries in the woods, pleas for help in familiar voices, calling from the shadowed groves. In the glade known as Cutter's Hollow, a hideous creature was spotted keeping pace with the caravan on the road. On the banks of the Pigawend, a forester's body was pulled from the reeds, eyes wide and throat gored, and in Ronbray, the grain wagons rot, untouched, for no one dares enter the woods. A contract has gone out. Pinned with wax seals and thorns of iron, its copy is nailed to every town board between Chaloport and Lodban. It speaks of a creature, of illusions and mimicry, of beaks and horns and haunting calls. They call it the Eidercorn. Hello adventurers and welcome back to the Red Quills. I'm Ryan and today we're diving into one of my favourite uses of a fantasy map, the quest map. The kind of map that you pass across the table with a conspiratorial grin as your players realise they're not just going on an adventure, they're stepping into a mystery. This video is a special one because it's not just my quill scratching the parchment. This time it is a collaborative effort with the wonderful creative folks at the Fluffy Folio, whose monsters and stat blocks are as deadly as they are delightful. And together we have built a one-shot handout map centered on the terrifying unicorn-like creature known as the Eidercorn, a predator that lures prey with mimicry and illusion. In this episode, I'll walk you through the 6 core elements, the purpose and value of quest maps and TTRPGs like Dungeons & Dragons, a quick dive into the history of these sort of illustrative maps, a tutorial breakdown on how to create it, this example, and of course the wrap up with some final tips, tools, and links to the resources, including your free downloadable version of this map and the Eidercorn stat block. So, grab your dice, your ink pens, your watercolors, and your well-worn copy of the Monster Manual. Let's talk about how to make maps that tell stories before a single dice is rolled. Quest maps, as we know them today, are largely a fantasy construct. They're tailored more for narrative impact than actual navigation. That said, the concept of a map that includes narrative cues isn't new. From medieval Europe's Mappae Mundi to the richly detailed plans of the Renaissance, some historical maps have served not just as guides but as storytelling tools, moral lessons, or records of local folklore. They help people navigate ideas as much as they did geography, which is great, because the idea of a contract to hunt a beast is not something supported in medieval history. But let's look at a few examples, like the Carta Marina, which we discussed before, from 1539. It's a Swedish ecclesiastics map, a chart of Scandinavia, which is packed with sea monsters and shipwrecks and legends, and it tells stories in each of the corners of the krakens off the coast of Iceland, of towns where giants supposedly live. And what makes the Carta Marina so valuable to fantasy mapmaking is its intentional mythologization of real space. If you're creating a map for a quest, your job is similar. You take something familiar, a town, a glade, or a marsh, and you make it strange and dangerous and unknown. Let's look at the Portolan Charts. They're from the 14th to the 16th century in Mediterranean cartographers. They're more practical in nature. The sea charts there often included sort of stylized coastlines, decorative compass roses, notations of notable events, which we'll come back to later, like storms and pirates attacks or even sea monsters. Their aesthetics influence all of us today who use compass roses or intricate borders or mysterious annotations, because they remind us that the beauty and the function of the map can go hand in hand, and that the margin of the map is a place where imagination can really go wild. Deputing a map is the last one I'm going to reference for this one. It's the copy from the 13th century, which is based on a Roman original. It's a sort of a long scroll-like road map of the Roman Empire, which wasn't drawn to scale. It was designed to show connections, not distances. And in many ways, it's the prototype for the fantasy-style travel map, a tool to move you through the narrative, but not necessarily from A to B. So for game masters and storytellers, the takeaway is this for the parallels historically. Accuracy isn't everything. A good map is a good tool, and the best tools are made for the job at hand. So let's get into the real cartographic spellcasting. How do you make a quest map based on these examples and based on what we want to do with it? This kind of map isn't really about logistics like trade routes or rainfall patterns or even much about history. It's about the atmosphere, about the clues and the pacing. It's about what the players feel when the parchment is opened on the table. So here's the step-by-step breakdown. Step 1 is define the core component of the quest. Before you draw a single line, ask yourself 4 questions. What is the player objective? What creature or antagonist are they facing? What is the immediate setting of the quest? You don't need the whole kingdom if you're just working in a small corner of it. And lastly, what clues or mysteries should the map provide? In our case, the objective is to hunt the Eiderkorn, which is a predator stalking the Duchy of Fenlock. The antagonist is the mythical, eerie, manipulative creature capable of outthinking, outwitting your heroes. The setting is rural, grim, dotted with some old ruins and strange woods, and clues are scattered. The site of last attacks, places where it's been seen, places that people have disappeared. So answering those questions can keep the map focused and immersive. Step 2 is to sketch the geography. Now your map should cover just enough ground for the quest to feel expansive, but not so much that it becomes overwhelming. And so the Duchy of Fenlock, as this example shows, includes a central town, which in this case is Shallowport. It's away from the quest, so the characters are safe there, but they'll need to venture out from there. 3 to 5 points of interest. And in this case, I do have several towns and the mine and the clearing of an old lair, but the points of interest are the clues that I have on the map, and the roads and footpaths that suggest movement and choice. I recommend working at a scale that makes these places feel connected but distinct, and a day's walk apart is a general rule. The duchy in this case is about 2 days from end to end. Step 3 is to add stylization, and this is where the magic happens. So you can use medieval inspired symbols. I've got nods here to my map of Ancient End on the map of the Sunder King using these small pictured markers. I've got painted coastlines and mountains, and adding in inked labels, handwritten in a style that looks a little bit messy, a little bit artisanal. And I didn't here, but it's very possible for you to use a washed paper or a faded paper or an aged parchment to create that sort of natural texture and that immersion there. So then you think the notation. Think things like abandoned lair, victims' remains, or 2 miners missing from the Fallon mine, or 1 child taken in the night. I'm going to add a few clues around here on the map in different areas so you get an idea of not only where it has been in the past, but a general idea of where it's moving to. So I'm going to add in dates so that they can make a timeline, and that turns the map into a mystery board. Once you've done that, you go into step 4, which is the adding the narrative elements, which is where my collaboration with the Fluffy Folio really shines. So alongside the map, we've created the new creature, the Eiderkorn, also called the Goz Beast or the Equansa. It's got a description. It's got a sense of how you can identify this creature from a distance and up close, and what you need to be aware of as its main forms of hunting. And the contract here offers a bounty for the creature's head. It provides some flavor, it provides some lore, it provides the rules of engagement. And that's crucial because the map tells the where, but the contract around it tells the why. So I've also got the Eidercorn's portrait, which I worked on first and last, illustrated in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. It's a watercolor rendering of this horse-bodied, goose-headed, illusionist predator. We wanted to work on something which is like the counterpoint to a unicorn, which is naturally, beautiful and kind and benevolent. This is something that has a similar shape, but is terrifying. It uses magic not to help people, but to lure them away. It's not beautiful. It's grotesque. And it tells the players that not only are they in for something weird and different, but in a dark reflection of the tales that they are familiar with. So that brings us to step 5, which is the final touches. In my case, the final touches are adding the scans of the maps. You can add in grains or folds or wax seals. You can do it by hand or you can do it digitally. You can photograph the result. It makes it feel a bit used. In my case, I'm going to take the time to add in a few more details after I've finished this particular video. It took me 6 hours to make this map, including the illustration. And the watercolor rendering of the Eidercorn did slow me down. I only have a certain amount of time to do these maps within the confines of the video. So in my own time and for the digital upload of the map that I'll do later on, I'll be adding in a few more details. But of course, the most important thing when you're creating the map is making sure that it's legible and it's understandable. You need to make any illustrations credible and real. You need to make sure that all of the text is readable so that they can understand what they're supposed to be doing. Never let stylization interfere with usability. Style comes from use, not the other way around. And so there you have it. A full quest map from narrative seed to finished artifact. And you've seen how storytelling and geography work hand in hand, how history inspires design, how you can use maps not just as props, but as promises to your players. What lies ahead is rich and weird and unforgettable. If you'd like to use this map in your own campaign, you can find it available for free download over on my Patreon. The link is in the description below, along with the beautifully horrifying stat block and creature art of the Eidercorn, courtesy of the brilliant folks at the Fluffy Folio. Check out those links in the description as well. Now we've got a couple more videos coming in this Back to Basics series covering different kinds of maps that you might want to include in your fantasy world. We've already had basic continent sketches to more specific world building discussions and using maps that have been created from other established worlds. So make sure that you're subscribed. Come hang out on the Discord server where the community is always buzzing with map ideas and campaign questions and good old-fashioned nerd joy. And until next time, remember, a map doesn't just show where you're going. It tells the story of how you got there. Happy mapping, and I'll see you in the next one.